Well, it is a great morning for all of us to get together here. Thank you for coming out. It is so important for all of us to do everything in our power to save our state. In many respects, this feels like a rescue mission for New York. We're leading the entire country right now in population loss. As we are here this morning, all across New York, in all different regions of this state, you have families and individuals who are sitting down talking to their loved ones about their breaking point. They feel like if they head to some other state that their money might go further. They don't feel safe walking the streets, whether they live in New York City or elsewhere. People feel like their kids' education is under attack. They feel like their freedoms are under attack. They want a government that represents them. All New Yorkers deserve to feel like they have a voice and representation in our state capital. And I'm sure that while we are here this morning, that there's no announcement that's taking place in Florida and Texas and South Carolina and North Carolina where they're talking about how everyone in that community is heading to New York. This is the Empire State. And we've been through a lot. Our reputation has been as the greatest state, the greatest country in the history of the world. For all of those New York families who are desperate for men and women in government to fight for them and represent them, they need leaders in government to be repealing cashless bail, to enact a law enforcement bill of rights, to recognize their inherent right of self-defense, to make sure they have all the tools and resources they need to do their jobs safely and effectively. District attorneys, like the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, should be removed for their refusal to enforce the law. You take an oath to enforce the law? But this district attorney immediately issued a day one memo that refused across the board to enforce all different laws, and on others to charge at a lesser included offense. As we are gathered here for these rallies and press conferences and announcements and meetings across this state, we still have 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds who are wearing masks all day long inside of schools. I'm sure if our grade school students were given a vote, that the statewide mask mandate on our kids on schools would have been removed already. It's important to follow the science. Kathy Hochul didn't even follow the political science when all the other blue state control-freak governors were removing their statewide mask mandate. She extended the mask mandate on our kids as young as 2 and 3 and 4 years old. People are struggling to afford to live here in New York. We have 62 counties in this state. Everyone who lives in every county, in every region of New York, deserves to feel like they have a voice and representation in our state capital. But one-party rule at every level of government is causing people to flee and not look back. A few months ago, we started a search for a lieutenant governor. We started with dozens of people. Many great names were submitted, a process of getting feedback from individuals on strengths and weaknesses of all of these amazing candidates, but we can only pick one. And that list became 17, and then it became 7 and 6, and simply based on merit. There was one exceptional candidate who rose to the top as the best of the best. And I'm excited to announce New York's next lieutenant governor this morning. She is a fighter. She has dedicated herself to community. She loves this city and this state. Our next lieutenant governor is somebody with so much experience fighting to protect our communities. Dedication, not just for family and friends, but for strangers too. There have been times where people have called to defund the police. The current Lieutenant Governor, Brian Benjamin, wasn't just a champion of the Defund the Police movement, he was the champion of the Defund the Police movement up in Albany. There are people who have been filling the ranks of the Hochul administration who believe that we should be getting rid of key aspects of policing, and that's wrong. I was raised in a law enforcement household. I have seen these exceptional, amazing men and women selflessly dedicated to their communities.
What about the Capitol
and getting
Police
attacked
and the insurrection and the attack
for
on the
their
Capitol Police at the insurrection?
Sit down,
Also
anti-hater.
But they get accused as a racist. They are targeted and spat on. And that same police officer who is targeted and spat on and called a racist, imagine this, just minutes later, is willing to take a bullet for that same person who might have spat on their face and called them a racist just minutes earlier. If somebody does something wrong in any occupation, and every occupation has people who might do the wrong thing, don't try to vilify the other 100% of our men and women in blue who are selflessly dedicated to protecting the streets of New York City, dedicated to protecting the streets of New York. Our next lieutenant governor has spent years of her life, 25, 26 plus years of service in law enforcement. She has rose through the ranks. She has earned the respect of her peers, of subordinates, of superiors. She has earned all of our respect, gratitude, and admiration. Our next lieutenant governor is going to be the first woman in law enforcement to rise to the level of lieutenant governor of the state of New York. And there's a lot to love about this woman I'm about to introduce. I'm grateful that she's willing to take on this challenge. I'm excited to see everything that she has dedicated to ensure that this rescue mission for our state is successful.
USA!
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm grateful for all of you for being here and tuning in over social media and being the first to welcome and greet New York State's next Lieutenant Governor, Alison Esposito.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, my name is Alison Esposito, and I'm just like you. A lifelong New Yorker who is sick and tired of the attack on our freedoms, our wallets, our safety. And ladies and gentlemen, this is as personal as it gets. I grew up in a law enforcement household. My father was an NYPD chief of police, and he served this city for almost 38 years. Like many children, my dad was my hero, and he instilled in me the deep desire to serve and the core belief that those who cannot protect themselves deserve to be protected. Holding those values close, I have dedicated my life to serving the people of the city of New York. I have been blessed to count myself among New York's finest for more than 24 years. I joined the NYPD in 1997, and I started off, as all rookies do, on patrol. In fact, I served here in Manhattan for my first precinct up in Midtown South. I went on from there to join the now disbanded anti-crime team, a plainclothes unit that targets violent street and subway crimes. After taking down some of the worst criminals, I joined the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, the SWAT rescue team. After being promoted, I served in the Bronx and in multiple detective squads throughout Manhattan. I was also afforded the opportunity to serve with the NYPD's gang unit and on the forensics team. These are a few of the many assignments which culminated in my most recent post, the commanding officer of the 70th Police Precinct in Brooklyn, where I served as deputy inspector. I have seen New York through some of its worst times. The rampant crime in the 90s, September 11, where for a brief time my father was even thought to have been among the missing. I have witnessed the disastrous years of Bill de Blasio, effectively reversing 25 years of dedicated and compassionate work by the New York City Police Department. And so far, only 2 months into this new year, I have already attended multiple funerals for my fallen brothers. But I've also seen a New York police force that transformed into the best of the best and the envy for law enforcement around the country. Until Bill de Blasio and the City Council worked hard to undo all that progress. One principle that has always pulled me through every challenge that I have faced, the main reason I joined the force, is because I truly believe that those who need help, those who are in danger, and those who cannot protect themselves deserve and have the right to be protected. I had no intention of leaving my beloved police department and the scores of dedicated men and women in blue who make up its ranks. But that same credence that had me put on the shield those many years ago now drives me today to begin this new and imperative journey to save our state. During the past year, the NYPD and police departments around the country have become public enemy number one. Through dangerous political rhetoric, false narratives, police departments have everywhere have been attacked by some of our public, and our police officers have lost faith in many of our elected officials. While accountability in any profession is an absolute necessity, today's lawmakers have shackled the hands of law enforcement with irresponsible restrictions while simultaneously allowing violent criminals to operate with impunity. Most recently, the mayor of New York, Eric Adams himself, went up to Albany to implore state lawmakers to reevaluate dangerous and irresponsible laws and policy. To no avail. Time and again, we've heard politicians talk about what they're going to do to fight crime. Well, I've actually done it. And I have no intention of slowing down. My job was to protect the innocent and to keep the people of the city of New York safe. My job now is to keep the people of the state of New York safe. When Congressman Zeldin asked me to join his team and take part in this fight to save our state as your next lieutenant governor, my path became clear. It is an honor and a privilege to join him, another New Yorker who's fought for our community in his continued service in the United States Army. Thank you for that. His time in public office and now this bid for governor, which will be successful. As a ticket, we bring to the table the leadership New York is desperate for. Two fighters that won't let up and are committed to saving our states. For far too long, I've witnessed the state and the city that I love deteriorate in a spiraling decline. Fatally flawed liberal policies like cashless bail, defund the police, the Less is More Act, and even DAs like Alvin Bragg, who refuse to enforce the law, have surrendered our streets to criminals. For far too long, I've watched my loved ones flee for safer, freer, and less expensive states. Ladies and gentlemen, New York is leading the way. It's in population loss. So many New Yorkers are reaching their breaking point, and this is mine. One-party rule in Albany has driven our state to the brink of no return, and it is critical that we elect Republican leadership to the executive branch, but also to break these supermajorities in the Senate and Assembly. New York and this country thrive on checks and balances. I won't put up with it anymore. I will fight for the future of our state, the future of my niece and nephews, for the future of all New York's children. I want our kids to be able to play in their neighborhoods safely, to go to school and see their classmates' smiling faces without masks, to not have to show their papers to go to dinner with their family, and so much more. COVID-19 mandates must end day one. Mask mandates, divisive curriculum, and bloated bureaucracy shut the most important people out of decisions involving our children, their parents, their families. As a result of the pandemic, we have seen a record number of New York small businesses and restaurants close. It's been heartbreaking. Now is the time to be supporting our struggling establishments, not fining or imposing restrictive mandates that effectively snuff out any chance they may have at recovery. I look forward to speaking with so many of these New Yorkers from every corner of our state, from Long Island to Buffalo, to hear their stories personally. When Lee Zeldin and I are elected, all New Yorkers will have the voice. All New Yorkers will be heard all the way to Albany, a place that has been deaf for far too long. Now more than ever, New York needs capable, compassionate, determined, and courageous leadership that will protect everyday New Yorkers, drive down the cost of living, educate our children to be the future leaders, and to restore our state to glory. Not too long ago, New York had the reputation for being the greatest state, the greatest country in the world. It's time we get back to acting like it.
We're going to win this race because we have to win this race. The announcement of Alison Esposito as our next lieutenant governor is bad news for the criminals who think that these streets belong to them. This is great news for law-abiding New Yorkers, for our men and women in blue, for the justice system, for the future of our state. Thank you so much, Alison Esposito.
My understanding is you've locked up a lot of support within the counties, with the county chairs. We expect next week at the convention, I know you've locked up a lot of the county support. What are you anticipating in terms of the vote? Do you expect a unanimous vote? What do you think is going to happen next week?
So the first step, we're thrilled to be joined by the chairman of the New York State Conservative Party, Jerry Cassar, is here. Jerry's...
Well, our convention is Saturday. I expect unanimous vote.
That's directly from the chair of the New York State Conservative Party. Since we got into this race April 8th, there's a saying in New York, and Senator Schumer is going to hate me say this, but with all these cameras here, I'm going to have to say it. There's a saying in New York that when you go visit every county in the state of New York at least once in a calendar year, it's called the full Schumer. But there's a new saying, because in the first 6 months of this campaign, we campaigned in every county in New York State at least twice, and that's called the full Zeldin. Tell Senator Schumer I said that. And we went out and we met with New Yorkers of all walks of life in all 62 counties of the state. Some of these counties we've been to 12, 15, 20 plus times, and we'll keep coming back. The Manhattan, New York County Republican Committee just endorsed our candidacy today. Yesterday, the Bronx County Republican Committee endorsed our campaign. We are now up to 60 of 62 county Republican committees have endorsed our campaign. That represents about 94% of the vote. We hope that we are able to get as close to a unanimous vote as possible. But listen, this is a product of working hard, of starting early, of going out and meeting people and earning their support and answering their questions and showing up over and over and over again. Listen, there are Democratic pockets here in New York City who I believe elected officials of both parties don't spend enough time visiting and addressing their needs. You could say that there are Democrats who don't go there because they feel that even if they don't go there, they'll still have their vote. And maybe they're right in some of these past elections. Republicans maybe haven't gone to those pockets because they believe even if they show up, they still won't have their vote. I don't know, maybe in some of these past elections, they would have been right. This is a campaign that will go to the reddest, most conservative Republican counties and groups, and we will go to the bluest, most liberal Democrat counties and groups. And by the way, they are all talking about the same issues and their breaking point and how they feel like it's time for them to go and never look back. The support that we have earned, we expect to be reflected with great support from the leadership and the members of the New York State Conservative Party. And then Monday and Tuesday in Nassau County on Long Island from the New York State Republican Committee.
Harry Wilson getting into the race, were you surprised by that, getting in a little race, and how would you rate him as a candidate? Do you consider him a bigger threat than perhaps the other two?
Listen, we've had a great launch over the course of the first 10 months of the campaign. We raised $8.5 million from 34,000 donations. There was a lot of attention that Governor Hochul got for the amount of money that she raised. But you know, since last July, when that number was counted from, just over $100,000 was from donations $100 or less. For us, 20,000 donations came from people donating $100 or less since last July. It was just under $1 million that we raised. The support has included thousands of volunteer signups. The support that we'll see at the upcoming conventions are a reflection of the hard work that we've put into it. There have been hundreds of endorsements, including members of Congress and State Senate and State Assembly and county executives and local elected officials. We're proud that we have received 100% of all of their endorsements as well, and it's come from leaders of third-party groups that aren't political. We've gotten a lot of broad-based support from around the state. I believe that anybody out there who believes that Kathy Hochul should be fired, anyone who believes that we should have balance in Albany, that we should break one-party rule, if you agree with me that all COVID mandates should be ending on day one, I hope that there aren't COVID mandates left come January. If you believe that cashless bail should be repealed and that judges should have the discretion to weigh dangerousness and flight risk and past criminal record and seriousness of the offense, well then get involved in our effort. Help us win. If you believe that we should be backing the blue instead of supporting them less, get involved in our campaign. If you believe that parents have a fundamental right to control the upbringing of their child, and just because kids are turned over to schools, that does not relinquish that right to the school system, then they should get involved in our campaign. So anybody out there who cares about the future of this state, we ask you to join our effort to help us win. We feel very confident in the plan that we have, the strategy, the timing. We saw it November 2nd with all different kinds of seats, races going from blue to red. And I believe that on November 8th, that we will be flipping the House of Representatives from Democrat to Republican, and the gavels are going to come out of the hands of Pelosi and Schiff and Nadler and Waters. And I believe that the Zeldin Esposito ticket, November 8th, 2022, will be making history for the first time in decades. We will be electing a Republican governor here in the state of New York with an amazing, talented fighter as our next Lieutenant Governor, Alison Esposito.
You're running. Can you tell, I'd like to know, why did you consider running for mayor this past cycle, and what happened? Obviously, candidate and your name was not on the ballot, so what happened?
Fate, here we are.
Yeah, everything is a consideration. The city that I love has been in a spiraling decline, and I have looked for any avenue to try to save it and to try to keep the people of the city of New York safe. So if I'm given the opportunity to affect change, I'm gonna take it. And again, as the future governor said, it's fate. This is the ticket I should have been on, and I need to do more than just save the city. It's the state.
And just for the congressman, I'd just like to know, before you got here, some of your supporters were calling into question the legitimacy of President Biden, that he is in the White House illegally, that he's not the real president, that things of that nature. Is that, do you endorse that belief?
Who said that?
I've got it on I do actually have it on my reporter, so.
No, I would be happy to engage with them. I'm just wondering who.
It's actually this one.
I was
right
having
here.
a private conversation with someone that has nothing to do with the gentleman running for governor. So
I just, well, it's a, you know, it's a supporter invited here
personal
today
opinion.
to give you support as you enter LG. I just want to know if that is, those supporter beliefs is something that you back or endorse.
Listen, I think it's extremely important, regardless of whether your candidate comes in first or second, that we're always talking about ways to improve election integrity. We should be talking about how in 2022, in 2023, in 2024, we can protect elections. And here in New York City, there's a new law that's on the book that allows 800,000 non-citizens to be able to vote. There's a new law in Albany right now where at first they were saying that in order for...
Respectfully,
let me
Congressman,
answer
that's
the
not my
question.
My
No,
question
you
is
might
about
not
the
be happy with the
President Biden.
answer, but let me give the answer. So there's a new law here in New York State where it says that in order for that a legal immigrant in this state to be able to get a driver's license, that they can opt in order to vote. And then they changed it where then you would have to opt out from voting. It's important for us to speak up on these issues regardless of whether your candidate comes in first or second. Here in New York State, in 2020, there was a change that was made with the absentee ballot portal, where people were able to go in even though it's contrary to the state laws and rules, that they allowed anyone to go in and request absentee ballots for anybody else. Regardless of whether your candidate comes in first or second, election integrity matters. Now, I think it's important for all members of the media, and regardless of whether you support one candidate for president or another, regardless of whether you're Republican or Democrat or otherwise, whether you are a conservative, a moderate, or a liberal, we need to do a much better job engaging with ourselves on these topics, because there was, you know, people were in their corners, there was different tribes, there was red versus blue, and folks weren't talking to each other, and that's wrong. Now, I'm a sitting member of Congress, and there is a real live issue that's going on overseas. It is something that can impact our energy supply. It's something that can impact our cost of living, our energy security, our nation's security. We have a NATO alliance. There are countries that are neighbors to Ukraine. I might be critical of the President of the United States. I may not have voted for President Biden, but he is the President of the United States. And I will try to find common ground, whether it's Mayor Eric Adams in New York City, it's Kathy Hochul and Brian Benjamin up in Albany, if it's President Biden and Kamala Harris down in Washington. My job, representing my constituents, is to find common ground however possible. They are the president and the vice president. That's my job. And I'm eager to work with anyone at every level of government, regardless of whether we agree or disagree. Now,
So do you denounce supporters who say he's in the White House illegally?
I'm not. Listen, if you wanna have a side, press conference with others, that's fine.
They're your supporters, and if they're going to be out campaigning,
Were you asking me for my opinion, or are you asking for other people's
I'm asking
opinions?
whether you endorse the opinion
I
of
answered your question. Thank you.
Next
Well,
question.
answer
Next
the
question.
Why did you try to overturn
Next,
the
another
2020
question.
Immediate question. Go.
Answer the question.
Somewhat
she asked
related
you.
to
Why
that subject.
Did you try to
So-
overturn the 2020
You've
election?
talked quite a bit about issues of crime, issues of economic development, issues that historically have often played well with moderate suburban voters. But what do you say to those moderate suburban voters who have increasingly moved to the Democratic side, at least in the Trump era, who maybe are with you in terms of concerns around crime or taxes, but are really troubled by your decision not to vote to certify the results of the 2020
Listen,
election?
as I travel around the state, I am hearing from voters, residents, constituents. Kathy Hochul calls them apostles. And I'm asking them, what do you want us focused on? What are the issues that matter most to you? That's what this campaign is about, focusing on the issues that matter most to New Yorkers. Now,
you don't hear
while
that
Kathy Hochul would love, Jay Jacobs, the chair of the Democratic Party, would love for you to ask other questions, for us to be talking about issues other than what matters most to New Yorkers, other than what I'm hearing across this state is causing them to hit their breaking points and flee. I'm going to continue to focus on reversing the attacks on wallet, safety, freedom, and our kids' education. I will continue to go spend time with the Asian American community in Flushing, Queens, as we did just a couple days ago. And in the Brooklyn community a couple days before that, where you have people who are being punched in the face because they're wearing a yarmulke and Jewish. You have people who are attacked in their cab because they're Sikh. You have folks who are pushed in front of oncoming train traffic. They're stabbed to death here in Manhattan. You have people mourning the loss of those in their community because of soft on crime policies. That's what I'm going to talk about. It's going to be very frustrating for people who have an agenda otherwise. I will infuriate people who just want us talking about anything other than the issues that matter most to New Yorkers. But guess what? We are leading the country in population loss. And we have an opportunity right now, right here, over the course of these next 9 months, to focus on the issues that Democrats and Republicans and liberals and conservatives and moderates are all begging for solutions on. It's about giving every New Yorker a voice and representation in our state capital. It's about having a balance of power in Albany and getting rid of one-party rule with outsized power of self-described socialists up in Albany right now. We need balance. And I have found, regardless of whether I'm in Flushing or we're in Brooklyn, if I'm with the black pastors and the first ladies in Sunnyside, Queens, I'm with the Hispanic voters in the South Bronx, I'm with the Russian voters in Brighton Beach, we were in Staten Island meeting with Jewish leaders. We are going to continue to outwork the field. No one's going to be able to outwork us, and we are right on the issues no matter how hard Kathy Hochul tries otherwise to distract, no matter how hard Jay Jacobs tries to talk about anything other than these issues that matter most to New Yorkers, and no matter how hard people trying to hold their water in the press insists on trying to talk about anything other than the issues that matter most to New Yorkers. But what's the best service? Because listen, you're working with an important media outlet with great reach, and it's every single day people pick up the paper or they go online. They're listening to what Zach Fink has to say on Spectrum News. They want to know what's happening in their community and their state. And we're going to focus on the issues that they're asking us to talk about. We have the solutions to fix them. And bad news for the Democrats, no matter how hard they try to get us to talk about anything other than the issues that matter most, at the end of the day, we're going to be successful and we're going to win this race with Republicans, with Democrats, with conservatives. We have now won 7 consecutive races in purple New York City suburban districts. That's with the votes of Democrats and independents. We have unseated a Democratic incumbent for the state Senate, who between him and his father were there for 30 years. We took out an incumbent Democrat for the House in 2014 who was there for 6 terms and 12 years. We had a tough primary along the way where they spent $4 million against us and we beat them by over 20 points. What is so frustrating for Democrats and their allies is that we go out there and earn the support of Democrats and independents too, by showing up to earn their support and by showing up over and over and over again to keeping their trust and support and their vote.
When do you expect President Trump to make an endorsement?
Are you with the media?
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on former Governor George Pataki potentially joining the race for governor?
Well, listen, Governor Pataki can look at a photo from '94 of a historic win. I was 14 at the time, a little bit before I got involved in politics. And that was an important win that he had. And in many ways, it changed the trajectory of New York State for the better. It provided a sense of balance in Albany that we desperately needed. That, in many respects, when you look at '94, you can compare it to 2022. And I hope that as he looks at that great historic photo of that win with his hands in the air, the history that was made, getting elected governor of the state of New York, that he gets himself a frame. And he can have that picture of that history made of '94, and he can get a picture of the history that will be made when the Zeldin Esposito ticket wins in 2022. Alison and I are willing to even autograph it for him as well. We will lean on him for his counsel and his thoughts and his advice, just like we will everybody else all throughout the entire state from all walks of life. We want to know their thoughts, their vision, their ideas, because this race is one that will be won because it has to be won.
And do you have any thoughts on his former political director saying he has no beef with you winning in November? And this is just the last question.
Listen, he probably has a whole lot of money that he's trying to get made personally, but that's a question for him. Listen, one of the things what I have found is that much of the consultant class has been very upset at my candidacy because we had a great team together and we just kept on building it from there. And there were people who were reaching out and they were asking for a whole lot of money to do basically nothing. And that's just not what we're about. The $5 donations that we're getting from a New York voter, the $2 donations that we get from a New York voter, that's more than just $2. It comes with their vote, and their family's vote, and their passion, and they're engaged on social media, and they're writing letters to the editor, and they're showing up at rallies. But yeah, there are a few people out there who we've heard very, very upset that while we've raised $8.5 million, that we're not spending it on no-show political consultants. That's not what this campaign is about. We have a duty to invest in our TV as much as possible, in our radio as much as possible, in our mail, and our digital. That's our focus. And by the way, I'm honored to be joined here by my wife, Diana. Our daughters, Michaela and Ariana, are here, and they're 15. They're in 10th grade, and thank you. I love you. Thank you for all the support, my family. There's no way that I'd be able to do this if not for the love and support of my family. There's no way that y'all would be able to do what you do if not for the love and support of your family, and same for everybody else who's here. So Diana, Michaela, and Ariana, thank you for being here, and thank you for being here, members of the media, and all of our supporters. Thank you for coming out to meet and greet our next Lieutenant Governor, a person who served a long time here at NYPD, has instilled fear in the hearts of criminals everywhere because she is bringing her fighting spirit, her vision, her ideas, her energy to the state capitol. She will not look back. She refuses to lose. And as I say, she believes losing is not an option.